By now you've likely finished the first insect pet assignment, the Madagascar hissing cockroach. Now it's time to take on a second insect pet, a tobacco hornworm. This image shows the various stages of development, the dramatic changes this caterpillar is going to undergo in the time you have it. So why do this assignment? Well, besides being a requirement, it actually is a very worthwhile assignment that allows you to make first-hand observations of an insect that goes through complete metamorphosis. So it's going to provide you the opportunity to experience molting firsthand, observe the development of an insect, and then also document its life cycle. So what exactly will you be doing for this assignment? Well, as I mentioned, you'll be observing the life cycle. So this picture on the right shows you the full life cycle of this insect, including the eggs, several instar stages, the pupal stage, and then the adult moth stage. So you'll be documenting and describing the following items: the stages of development and the number of instar stages. So when does it reach the immature stages? When does it reach the pupal stage? And finally, when does it reach the adult stage? You'll also be discussing the molting process and any physical changes that you see, such as changes in appearance or size, and then also the impact of hormones. And we'll be talking a little bit more about the hormones later. So like your Madagascar hissing cockroach, you're going to be doing a scientific report for the tobacco hornworm. And ultimately, the data that you obtain from this investigation will be synthesized in that report. I would encourage you to take a look at the grading rubric because, again, the elements that are covered in that rubric, as long as you follow that, you should do very well in this assignment. Now, the rubric is a bit different than the cockroach one because in the hornworm case, we are exploring specifically the life cycle. So what are the brief elements that we'll be covering? So again, we're going to have an introduction, and that's going to include your purpose and objectives again. And you'll be discussing things about your hornworms, such as their biology, what order they're in, what kind of metamorphosis they go through, food preferences, etc. Your methods is going to be discussing what exactly you did. So a couple paragraphs on what you were actually trying to accomplish with this experiment. Your results is going to be then your data that you've collected, and you can include tables, graphs, and photos in there. And then finally, you're going to have your discussion and conclusions where you're going to just summarize your results and what you learned. And you will want to also put a reference section in there, putting some of the sources such as that you looked for on the internet that you may have found some background information about your hornworm. So what about grading for this assignment? Well, as I mentioned before, if you follow the rubric, you're going to do fairly well. But what are some of the things that I'm looking for? So make sure that all life stages you observe are noted in a reasonable time frame. So this would include the actual egg hatch or eclosion. What date does the egg actually hatch? The development of the instars, the time period spent in each instar. So maybe on a certain day that they go into their first instar, then a few days later they molt into their second. You're just going to want to keep track of those different dates and record those. And then finally your metamorphosis, so which is the onset of stages. So when do they go from egg to caterpillar, then caterpillar to pupa, and then pupa to adult finally? Now, one thing I want to make sure you're aware of is if for some reason your egg does not hatch, please let us know that within, a few days. They usually don't take very long to hatch. So if there's a problem, it means that maybe the egg was not viable or it died, and we certainly can get you a replacement. And we don't want it to get too far behind on watching the life cycle. So just email me and make sure that I know that, and I can let you know what to do as far as getting a replacement. So what are some of the details that you're going to be talking about with your observations of your tobacco hornworm? Well, basically you're going to note any physical characteristics and behaviors that occur for each of the stages. So this might include things like size, color, and anatomical parts. Also, you're going to be discussing hormone information. So what hormones are involved in this process, and how did the juvenile hormone change? And these hormones will be discussed in our growth and development lecture. So as I mentioned, we will have that rubric available for you to look at and to help guide you as you do this assignment. So that will be available in Canvas. So you're probably wondering, how's the best way to get started? Well, the first thing is I will send out an email when we have the hornworms available. And if you are here in Lincoln or on campus, you will come to the entomology building to pick those up. And if you are a true distance student, you can also let me know that and we will mail you a hornworm. So once you get your hornworm, you will be recording that egg hatch. And then you will record the instars. Again, how are we going to do this? Well, some of the things that you're going to look for is changes in physical size and also changes in size of the horn on the back of its abdomen, shed skins, and then as it goes through the later instars, you're really going to see a lot of difference in the actual appearance as well. You also are going to want to consult some internet resources to kind of give you some background about the hornworm, and that also can give you some information on what to actually expect as you go through watching this hornworm develop. So here is an example of what I was talking about with how the tobacco hornworm changes in its physical size and appearance. So you can see the difference between the first instar there at the top. It's a yellowish colored caterpillar with a really long black horn on its abdomen. And compare that with the fifth instar there at the bottom. It has a much shorter horn. That's kind of a reddish color. It's become a much more robust caterpillar, and then also the coloration is significantly different. So these are the types of things that you're going to be looking for as you make your observations. So how do you actually take care of the caterpillar once you get it? Well, we will be giving you the caterpillar in a vial that has a sponge top to it. And this will be filled with a nutritional diet that will provide both the food and water resources for the caterpillar. So you don't need to add anything else to it. You don't need to add any extra water or extra food, anything like that. The nutritional diet will take care of everything for your caterpillar. Now, temperature-wise, again, as we know, insects are cold-blooded, and so they're temperature sensitive. So you're going to want to keep this caterpillar in a location that is 68 degrees at a minimum. You don't want it much colder than that, or it can basically cause that insect to think that winter is coming on or colder weather is coming on, and that will really slow down its growth. So definitely keep it at that 68 degrees or more. You also have to keep in mind the light requirement. It needs at least 12 hours a day. And this doesn't have to be sunlight because depending on when you're taking this class, it may get dark sooner than other times of the year. So you want to make sure that you give it the 12 hours, but that can include either natural light or artificial light. So in other words, don't keep your caterpillar in a dark closet or something like that. Again, this is going to really significantly slow down the growth of the caterpillar. Also, the caterpillar will have frass, its waste products, as it goes through its development. So make sure that you keep your vial clean. And this is fairly easy to do. It's going to be fairly small when the caterpillar is small, but then later then the frass is going to be larger and is going to take up a lot more room. So you want to make sure that you keep that clean so that the caterpillar has continuous access to its food. So you can use things like a Q-tip to clean out the waste product. You can also put the caterpillar on a napkin or something like that and just kind of shake the side of the tube, and a lot of times that frass will just become loose. But just whatever works best for you to keep that frass cleaned out. Okay, so one last thing that I just wanted to mention is that as your caterpillar gets into its later stages, it's actually going to look pretty crowded in that vial. Now, technically, you can keep it in that vial until it pupates, and then you should move that pupa into another container with some sticks and things like that so that the moth will be able to emerge without any problems. However, what I actually recommend is once that caterpillar gets around that fourth or fifth stage, when it's probably going to stop feeding quite as much, but you're going to want to move that into another container with some soil or vermiculite or something like that on the bottom of the container. So again, the container can be like a Cool Whip container or terrarium or anything like that that you might have even used for your Madagascar hissing cockroach. And just let it go in there so it has more room to move around, and you're going to notice some interesting behavior as it gets closer to pupation as well. So I would do that. Just go ahead and scoop any extra food that you have and put that into the container. And that's another thing, that if you do need extra food, we can give you some extra food as well if you end up running out before the end of the experiment. So with that, again, if you have any questions, please let me know as you go along with this experiment. And good luck with this activity, and I hope that you find it a useful activity for your learning.